Hey there, Benchmarks members. Welcome to a special update on Medicaid transformation. Yes, I realize this is so exciting. It's like watching paint dry. And as such, I'm going to try to make this as short and simple as possible so that I don't bore you to death. That being said, I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of details. I'm just hitting some highlights, but we have links attached to this update where you can go to the bills that spell this stuff out and you can look at it in all kinds of excruciating detail if you so choose. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. During session, which just ended a little bit ago, last month, we saw a lot of activity around two bills trying to change Medicaid transformation, and that's what this update's going to be about. But first, for those of you who may not be real familiar with North Carolina yet, or just don't know that much about how the Medicaid transformation is rolled out, I want to give you a quick overview. So North Carolina, like most states, started out with fee-for-service in both physical health and behavioral health. The legislature decided, let's move behavioral health under managed care, and that's how we ended up with LME MCOs. So in North Carolina, we put all of our MHDD, SUD, mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use disorders underneath this managed care LME MCO entities, but our physical health still stayed in a fee-for-service. The legislature really wanted the physical health side to also go under managed care, and it took them a little longer. There was a lot of political pushback, but eventually, about 2 years ago, they came up with new legislation that would drive these changes on Medicaid for physical health. The way it looked under that legislation was this. There were 3 statewide prepaid health plans, managed care companies. These 3 statewide entities, you could choose one of the 3 to do your managed care, or if you wanted something a little closer to home, they also had regions that were created across the state, and in each region you could apply to become a provider-led entity to manage Medicaid. And so there could be up to 12 provider-led entities, PLEs, within these regions that you could choose from to also manage your Medicaid. So you could choose one of the 3 statewide, or you could choose one of the up to 12 provider-led entities in the regions. A little convoluted, yes, I know. So as for behavioral health, it was left to the side. It wasn't touched under that original legislation. It was kept as it is under the LME MCOs for a 3-year period during which the new managed care companies for physical health came up. During that 3-year window, the LME MCOs stayed the same, and at the end of that period, it said in the legislation that we would go to integrated physical and behavioral health care, but it didn't say how that was going to happen or what was going to happen. But a lot of folks had this sense, based on discussions with legislators and others, that that would be the end of the managed care companies of the the LME MCO, on behavioral health. So at the end of that 3 years, a lot of folks thought the LME MCOs that do behavioral health would go away, and these entities that had taken over physical health would ultimately end up taking over behavioral health. I know that's a little bit confusing, but think of it as 2 buckets. They had a bucket for physical health, and those were your prepaid health plans and your local PLEs. And then we also had behavioral health running with LME MCOs, and at the end of the 3 years, they wanted these 2 to come together in some magical form, and the idea was that the LME MCOs would probably go away, and those who had the physical health contracts would ultimately take them over. Under some legislation that came out through House Bill 403 and House Bill 156 during the last session, both of these bills passed, there were changes to that plan. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. The new plan is rolled out this way. There would be 4 statewide prepaid health plans instead of 3. So now, under the new plan moving forward, we will have 4 statewide prepaid health plans, managed care companies, to do the physical health under Medicaid. The PLEs under those regions would stay the same. We'd have up to 12. At the same time, there's changes to the behavioral health system that are very different than what was in the original legislation. Under 403, we would create these things called tailored plans The tailored plans are the high-end need behavioral health consumers who, and it'd be MHDDSA, all of that would be under these behavioral health tailored plans. So under the tailored plan, you have severe and persistent mental illness, you have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and you have substance use disorders, and they're all high level. You also have them taking over the physical health of the individuals that are in this tailored plan. So think of it this way. Currently, our LME MCOs are across worried well and high need individuals. The way this is written, the LME MCOs under tailored plans would only be serving high-end consumers, and those who were not in that high-end need would be served by the entities who are hired for the physical health managed care system. So that's 4 statewide PHPs or up to 12 PLEs. I know this is so confusing. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. So that being said, we have something new of what it's going to look like for the LME MCOs. They are not just doing behavioral health, they're doing physical health and behavioral health, but they're only doing high-end behavioral health. Now, when I say behavioral health through this, I mean MHDDSA. It's just a lot faster to talk about it this way, but some folks get confused around behavioral health because they don't think it includes IDD, and some don't believe it includes SUD, but I'm using behavioral health for all of them just so that we all know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got something that looks really different for the LME MCOs. Now, a lot of folks had concerns about the LME MCOs doing physical health. They are required under this legislation to subcontract out to a managed care company that is familiar with doing physical health. They subcontract out the physical health side of the tailored plans, but they are managing all of the state and federal dollars that are coming through for that physical health on the Medicaid side. They just are subcontracting with an entity to do it. So what does this look like? It looks like we have probably a contract coming out for the physical health side the beginning of August. So an RFP will come out. We will have a lot of managed care companies, my guess is, applying for these 4 statewide managed care companies, PHPs, and then we'll have probably less applying for the PLEs. And then we'll have a delay for 1 year. Once those managed care companies come up on the physical health side, there's a delay for 1 year before the implementation of the behavioral health tailored plans. And so under the tailored plans, once they come up and are running, they have a 4-year contract window. The first round of the contracts for the behavioral health tailored plans are only open to the LME MCOs, nobody else. So again, we have the physical health side that's going to come up and running. There's a year delay before we start the behavioral health tailored plans. And when those come up, only LME MCOs can apply for them. The legislation says that there can only be no more than 7 and no less than 5 tailored health plans. That means that we're probably going to see somewhere close, my guess is, to the 5 mark. But clearly we are not going to have all existing LME MCOs who will be running a tailored plan. But what we hear, again, is that it's probably going to be closer to the 5 mark. They want to get the number of LME MCOs down. The big question is which LME MCOs are going to get a contract, noting that it requires that that there is a process to review the LME MCOs to determine readiness as to those who are ready and appropriate to take it on. It also requires that they have to apply, and There's lots of hoops that they need to jump in the applications, including passing the comprehensive readiness review before they can even apply. There is potentially changes in the catchment areas. Obviously, if we have 7, that's less MCOs than we have now. So we will have some catchment areas that change. So think about if we go from the number of LME-MCOs now down to 5, those regions are going to change. We don't know who they're going to choose, but we have some pretty good ideas about who they're leaning towards. The language, the way it's written, is pretty interesting because it says that the LME-MCOs can merge with each other. They can create they can merge, they can be acquired by another LME-MCO, and all of this is contained under Chapter 122C, but a lot of 122C is going to have to be changed next session to accommodate the changes that are coming in these bills. So there's a lot of things that are happening as far as changes that have to be made before the tailored plans roll out. There are some questions as to what's going to happen under these tailored plans. One of the questions is, where do foster kids go? That's kind of left out, and it's put up to the secretary to come back with a recommendation. The way that 403 reads, they either end up in a tailored plan or a specialty plan. There are concerns that have been raised by legislators over how transient foster youth are, and there's a concern that that youth who are in foster care would find themselves disjointed in their behavioral health care if they were moving from one tailored plan to another. And so there's some interest in a specialty plan that would just serve individuals who are in the foster care system. So that is an option too, but the secretary will have to come up with recommendations. The legislation also recommends, directs the department that they have to come up with a plan for implementation. That came out, that language came out, and we sent that out to members that overviewed their perspective on how this would be implemented. I have to say a lot of it was very gray because they're still trying to figure out pieces of it. They had to get a review and this, I guess you would call it a white paper, for how they wanted to implement it in a very, very short time, even though there were still a lot of questions. And that's why I think a lot of it is pretty vague and not completely directing one way or the other. They needed some wiggle room to figure all this out. So all that being said, there is a lot that is coming down the pike for Medicaid. There's going to be tons of changes. For those of you who serve clients in outpatient, what we're going to be seeing, we guess, is for individuals who just need outpatient, you will likely be seeing those clients move over to the physical health side when the tailored plans go into play and we start shifting folks out of the behavioral health under LME-MCOs. When we see that shift taking place, that's when we'll see your need to start contracting with some of these PHPs or PLEs, because the outpatient services will be moving out under the physical health side of the house. Now, at the end of 4 years, again, prepaid health plans, this physical health side, managed care, comes up and starts running, and we have all these new folks doing managed care for physical health. A year after that starts, the tailored plans go into play. Once the tailored plans go into play, the LME-MCOs chosen to run the tailored plans have a 4-year contract. At the end of that 4 years, it goes open to whomever. So then it becomes an open contract. The way it currently reads, it is only nonprofits who can apply for it, but it is possible that we may see legislation that changes that and takes the nonprofit language out as moving forward. Because you got to remember, this is a ways away. We're talking about an RFP coming out in August next month for the new managed care for physical health. Then they've got to get those guys chosen, and then they have to give them a period of time to get up and running. And then once they start running, there's a year delay before the tailored plans go into play. Then there's 4 more years. So it's probably going to be a year before we see the physical health side contracts start. from about now, approximately a year or so, and then another year before the tailored plans start, and then a 4-year contract. So that by itself is 6 years before we even get to the place that the contracts go out open to bid on the behavioral health side. So it's a pretty big window of what's coming, and there could be a tremendous amount of changes that take place between now and that period. Okay, so that is my quickest overview I could do. I tried to make this as simple as possible. I'm very much hoping I didn't make this more confusing. If you have questions, please, please, please give me a call. I know, especially with the acronyms, this can get pretty confusing, but I hope I've been able to lay this out in a way that makes some sense. Again, the links are here for House Bill 403 and 156, so please feel free to pull those up. Look at them, read the details. If you have questions, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about either of the bills. All that being said, we hope you all have a great day, and thank you for your membership in Benchmarks.